You have been performing your entire life, and the performance is killing you. Every smile you've carefully calculated, every word you've meticulously measured, every gesture you've precisely designed to earn approval from people who will forget your name the moment you leave the room. This desperate, bottomless hunger for validation, this insatiable need to be enough for others is not love. It is not connection. It is not even human kindness. It is spiritual starvation disguised as virtue, emotional cannibalism dressed up as care. Look at your life honestly. How many decisions have you made based on what others would think? How many dreams have you abandoned because they didn't align with someone else's vision of who you should be? How many times have you swallowed your truth to avoid disappointing people who barely know you, barely see you, barely care about the real you? The applause you seek is nothing more than an echo chamber of your own emptiness, reverberating back the hollowness you refuse to acknowledge. Every time you twist yourself into shapes that please strangers, every time you contort your soul to fit the expectations of others, you commit the ultimate betrayal. The betrayal of the one person who will never abandon you, never reject you, never leave you, yourself. You have become an actor in a play you never auditioned for, speaking lines written by the fears and projections of others, wearing costumes tailored by their insecurities and limitations. Your authentic voice has been buried beneath layers of performance, your true face hidden behind masks of acceptability, your genuine desires sacrificed on the altar of others' comfort. The exhaustion you feel is not from working too hard, it's from the constant effort of being someone you're not. The loneliness you experience is not from being alone, it's from never showing up as yourself. The anxiety that plagues you is not from external pressures, it's from the internal war between who you are and who you think you need to be. This is not living, this is dying while breathing, shrinking while standing tall, disappearing while desperately trying to be seen. This is the slow suicide of the soul that chooses others' approval over its own truth, others' comfort over its own authenticity, others' acceptance over its own worth. From your very first breath, they conditioned you to believe that love was a transaction, conditional, earned, deserved only through performance. Good children please their parents by suppressing their wildness, their curiosity, their natural impulses. Good students please their teachers by conforming to their limitations, accepting their boxes, never questioning their assumptions. Good people please everyone by denying their authentic impulses, their genuine reactions, their instinctual responses to the world. You learned that your worth was determined by external validation, that happiness came from being wanted by others, that safety meant being accepted by the crowd. Your parents, however well-meaning, taught you that love could be withdrawn when you misbehaved, that acceptance was contingent on your performance, that their approval was something you had to earn through compliance. School reinforced this message, with grades, gold stars, and constant comparison to others. You learned to measure your value through external metrics, to seek validation from authority figures, to fear the disapproval of peers. The church, a religious institution, added another layer. You were taught that you were fundamentally flawed, that you needed to earn divine love through good behavior, that your natural impulses were sinful and needed to be suppressed. Society completed the programming with its endless messages about success, beauty, achievement, and social status. You learned that your worth was tied to your productivity, your appearance, your achievements, your ability to impress others. The media showed you perfect images of how you should look, feel, and behave. Social media amplified this to an unbearable degree. Now you could measure your worth in likes, shares, and comments. But what they called virtue was actually fear, wearing the mask of kindness. What they labeled love was actually emotional extortion. You, performing your assigned role in exchange for temporary warmth, fleeting approval, momentary acceptance. What they praised as selflessness was actually self-erasure, the slow death of your individual spirit in service to collective comfort. The religion of your childhood taught you that sacrifice was noble, that self-denial was holy, that putting others before yourself was the highest virtue. But they confused genuine generosity with self-abandonment, authentic love with spiritual slavery, True service with the complete denial of your own needs and desires. They taught you to mistrust your instincts, to doubt your perceptions, to defer to everyone else's version of reality. Your family dynamics reinforced these patterns. Perhaps you were the peacemaker, always smoothing over conflicts by sacrificing your own needs. Perhaps you were the achiever, earning love through success and accomplishment. Perhaps you were the caretaker, learning that your value came from how well you could serve others' needs while ignoring your own. Now you move through the world like a spiritual beggar, collecting compliments like coins, hoarding acceptance like bread during famine, storing validation like water in a desert. Your relationships became elaborate performances where you auditioned daily for the role of beloved, friend, colleague, family member. Your authenticity became a negotiable commodity, something you could trade for temporary acceptance. Your soul became something you sold piece by piece to anyone willing to purchase your performance. Every conversation became an opportunity to win approval. Every interaction became a chance to prove your worth. Every relationship became a stage where you perform the version of yourself that others seem to want. You learn to read rooms, to adjust your personality based on the audience, to become a chameleon of acceptability. The pain you feel in solitude is not loneliness. It is the anguished cry of your authentic self, imprisoned in the dungeon of your need to please, screaming from the depths of the betrayal you've committed against your own nature. Every rejection feels like death because you never learned that you could exist, fully, completely, magnificently, without external confirmation of your worth. Every criticism cuts to the bone because you have no internal foundation of self-worth to fall back on. The ancient wisdom traditions speak of two fundamental modes of existence, being and becoming. You have spent your entire life becoming what others wanted, shape-shifting, adapting, morphing, while completely forgetting the revolutionary truth of simply being. Nietzsche called this the herd mentality. The dissolution of individual will into collective approval, the death of authentic existence in service to mass conformity. But the philosophers who touched truth understood something deeper. Lao Tzu spoke of the uncarved block, the original nature that exists before conditioning, before performance, before the desperate scramble for acceptance. The Buddha recognized that suffering comes from attachment, including the attachment to being liked, being accepted, being enough for others. There is another way to exist in this world. There is a wholeness that does not depend on fragments of acceptance gathered from the approval of strangers. There is a completeness that emerges not from addition, not from accumulating validation, but from recognition, the profound recognition that you were never incomplete to begin with. The river does not seek permission to flow toward the sea. The mountain does not audition for the right to touch the sky. The sun does not perform to earn its place in the heavens. They exist in their essence, complete in their being, whole in their fundamental nature. This is the philosophical foundation of authentic existence. Wholeness as birthright, not achievement. Completeness as natural state, not distant goal. Theon. Existentialists understood that authentic existence requires the courage to be yourself in a world that constantly demands you be someone else. This is not narcissism. It is the profound recognition that you cannot give what you do not have, cannot love others truly until you have learned to be at home with yourself. Now imagine a completely different kind of virtue, one that arises, not from the desperate attempt to please others, but from the overflowing abundance of inner wholeness. This is the virtue of the full cup that gives because it cannot contain its richness, not because it seeks to purchase love with its emptiness. This is the generosity of the sun that shines not to be admired, but because shining is its essential nature, its inevitable expression. This new virtue is revolutionary because it operates from a completely different foundation. Instead of giving from depletion, hoping to fill the void through others' gratitude, you give from overflow. Instead of loving to be loved in return, you love because love is what pours forth when you are connected to your own source. Instead of serving to earn worth, you serve because service becomes natural when you are whole. When you feel complete within, when you recognize your wholeness as fundamental truth rather than distant aspiration, everything in your life transforms. Generosity becomes natural expression rather than calculated transaction designed to win approval. Kindness flows from inner abundance rather than from the desperate need to be perceived as kind by others. Love becomes pure gift rather than elaborate bargain where you trade pieces of yourself for temporary affection. Your very presence becomes sacred offering rather than desperate performance. You no longer enter rooms seeking validation. You bring validation with you like light, like warmth, like the presence of something fundamentally complete. You no longer exhaust yourself asking, "Do they like me?" But liberate yourself by asking, "How can I honor what is most true in this moment?" Your relationships undergo a complete metamorphosis. They shift from extraction to expression, from taking to overflowing, from need-based transactions to abundance-based exchanges. You attract different people, those who resonate with authenticity rather than those who prefer your performance. You repel others, those who are comfortable with your self-betrayal, who benefited from your willingness to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. The person who feels complete within does not fear rejection because they were never truly fractured by what others thought of them. They understand that rejection often says more about the other person's capacity than about their own worth. They do not desperately need to be understood because they have taken the sacred time to understand themselves completely. They do not require external love as validation because they have learned to be their own beloved, their own source of acceptance, their own unshakable foundation of worth. This wholeness within creates what mystics call the unmoved mover, a center of being so solid, so complete, that external circumstances cannot destabilize it. When you operate from this place, you become like the mountain that remains unmoved by the storms that rage around it, like the deep ocean that remains calm despite the waves on its surface. Your decisions begin to come from wisdom rather than fear, from inner knowing rather than external pressure. You choose relationships that nourish your soul rather than those that simply validate your ego. You pursue work that aligns with your values rather than just seeking others' approval of your success. You speak your truth even when it makes others uncomfortable, because you are no longer willing to betray yourself for their comfort. This new virtue is radical because it challenges the entire system of conditional love, performance-based acceptance, and transaction-based relationships that our society is built upon. It threatens those who have grown comfortable with your compliance, who have benefited from your willingness to sacrifice your truth for their ease. It is the virtue of the person who has remembered their essential nature and refuses to betray it for temporary approval or fleeting acceptance. But even this beautiful wholeness, even this hard-won inner completeness, must be held with an open hand. Even the most profound truths must sometimes retreat into sacred silence to avoid becoming another performance, another identity to defend, another mask to maintain. The wise soul knows when to withdraw, when to let even the most beautiful revelations die so they can be reborn in deeper authenticity. There are seasons of the soul that require solitude, not the desperate, lonely solitude of the rejected and abandoned, but the sacred, chosen solitude of the complete. In this silence, you discover that wholeness itself is not a destination to reach, but a returning to what was always there. It is not an achievement to display, but a remembering of what you forgot, a coming home to what you abandoned. The river periodically disappears underground, flowing through hidden channels only to emerge stronger, clearer, more powerful than before. The tree sheds its leaves in autumn not in defeat but in wisdom, discovering the elegant strength of its essential structure beneath all ornamentation. The sun sets each day not in failure but in trust, knowing that darkness reveals the stars, that were always present but hidden by its brightness. This is the profound wisdom of impermanence. Even your most cherished wholeness, even your most precious authenticity, must be willing to die daily to remain truly alive. The moment you grasp too tightly to any identity, even the identity of being whole, being authentic, being complete, it begins to calcify into another performance. In these moments of sacred withdrawal, in this chosen solitude, you touch the source of your completeness, not the constructed wholeness of positive thinking or spiritual bypassing, but the elemental wholeness that existed before you learned to doubt it, that will exist after you stop defending it, that is so fundamental. It requires no maintenance, no performance, no external validation. The journey from performing to being, from seeking external validation to recognizing inner wholeness, from fragmentation to completeness. This is not a path you can walk halfway. It is not a philosophy you can adopt casually, or a truth you can embrace partially while keeping one foot in the old world of performance and approval seeking. It requires the revolutionary courage to disappoint people who have grown comfortable with your performance, who have benefited from your willingness to betray yourself. It requires the fierce strength to sit with your own company until you remember why it has always been enough. It requires the willingness to lose relationships that were built on your willingness to sacrifice your authenticity for their comfort. It requires the courage to stand alone until you attract people who love your truth more than your compliance, who celebrate your authenticity more than your adaptability. This is not a gentle transformation. This is a revolution of the soul. There will be people who are threatened by your wholeness, who preferred you when you were broken and seeking their approval. There will be relationships that cannot survive your refusal to perform, connections that were built on your willingness to abandon yourself. There will be moments of profound loneliness as you shed the version of yourself that others wanted and embrace the truth of who you are. But on the other side of this sacred destruction lies something incomparably beautiful. A life lived from the inside out, relationships based on authentic connection rather than mutual performance. A sense of self so solid that external circumstances cannot shake it. You will discover that the love that comes to the authentic self is deeper, richer, more nourishing than anything you received while performing. The work begins now. It begins with small acts of honoring your truth, even when it's inconvenient. It begins with saying no when your body says no, regardless of others' disappointment. It begins with expressing your genuine thoughts instead of the thoughts you think others want to hear. It begins with choosing your values over others' expectations, your inner guidance over external pressure. It begins with the radical act of coming home to yourself, not the self you think you should be, not the self that would make others comfortable, but the self that has been waiting patiently beneath all the performances for you to remember who you truly are. If these words have awakened something deep within you, if you recognize the exhausting prison of perpetual performance and feel the stirring hunger for the freedom of inner wholeness, if you are ready to stop auditioning for your own life and start living it, if you are prepared to disappoint some people in order to honor the truth of your being, write in the comments. This simple but profound declaration, I choose wholeness over applause. Let this be more than words typed into a digital void. Let this be your sacred contract with yourself, your declaration of independence from the tyranny of external validation. Let this be the moment you plant your flag in the territory of your own soul and declare it sovereign, unconquerable, yours alone to govern. Let this be the beginning of your return, not to some idealized version of yourself, but to the essential self that existed before the world taught you to doubt it, before society convinced you to abandon it, before fear persuaded you to betray it. This return is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you have always been beneath the layers of performance and pretense. The path ahead will test you. There will be moments when the old patterns call you back, when the familiar comfort of seeking approval seems easier than the uncertain territory of authentic living. There will be people who will try to convince you that your wholeness is selfishness, that your authenticity is cruelty, that your refusal to perform is somehow wrong. But remember this truth. The sun does not audition for the right to rise each morning. It does not seek permission from the darkness to bring light. It does not perform to earn its place in the sky. It rises because rising is its nature, because shining is what it was born to do, because its very existence is gift enough. The ocean does not apologize for its depths or perform to earn the right to be vast. The mountain does not seek approval, to stand in its majesty or perform to justify its height. They exist in their fullness, their completeness, their authentic nature, and their existence alone makes the world more beautiful. And you were never meant to beg for acceptance of your existence, never meant to audition for the right to take up space in this world, never meant to perform for the privilege of being yourself. You were meant to exist so fully, so completely, so authentically, that your very being becomes a gift to a world hungry for truth, starving for authenticity, desperate for the sight of someone who has remembered how to be whole. Your wholeness is not selfish. It is the greatest gift you can offer to others. When you stop trying to be enough for everyone else, you finally become enough for yourself. And from that foundation of self-completion, you can offer the world something it desperately needs. The example of a human being who has learned to love themselves so completely that their love overflows naturally to others. Begin again. Begin from wholeness rather than from the assumption of your brokenness. Begin from completeness rather than from the belief in your inadequacy. Begin from the revolutionary understanding that you are not a project to be fixed, not a problem to be solved, not a performance to be perfected. Begin from the recognition that you are already whole, already complete, already enough. Not because you have finally earned it through good behavior or stellar performance, but because wholeness is your birthright, completeness is your natural state, and being enough is what you have always been. Begin now. The world has been waiting, not for your perfect performance, but for your authentic presence, not for your flawless execution of someone else's script, but for your courageous embodiment of your own truth, not for your desperate attempts to be enough for others, but for your radical acceptance of the wholeness that has always lived within you. The time for performing is over. The time for being has begun. And you, magnificent, complete, whole you, are ready.